And welcome back, folks, to the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining us as they do every single Thursday at 9 o'clock hour, the MGoBlog Roundtable with the MGoBlog Crew. They are with us once again. Final home game of the season. One more to get down before Ohio State. Joining me to kind of look back upon Nebraska and look ahead to this game, good friend Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
I'm well.
Craig Ross, the venerable one. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. And then, of course, Seth Fisher. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Morning, Sam. I'm not looking past whoever we're playing this weekend.
Right. I hear you, and I get it. And yet, I just feel like I was proven right about this team. They were overrated. But let's look back first to Nebraska. Brian, just your broad brush your takeaways from that contest for me.
Well, I charted about 7 million runs, and a total of 5 of them were less than 3 yards. And one of those was first and goal from the 2. So just in terms of like a consistent run game that gains 3 to 12 yards. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Like Blake Corum averaged 6 yards a carry and had a long of 12. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how impossible that is? It was something that I think we expected going in, given what we saw from Nebraska's defensive tackles, but just the sheer ability to execute from Michigan's front 7, because they have 2 tight ends basically all the time, was just astounding. And they're running a bunch of counter stuff that puts guys in wrong gaps. They're running gap stuff that plays on their inside zone and duo ability. They're really diversified what they were doing in the red zone. So we didn't see them just run dives 4 straight times. They actually did some stuff that got outside the tackles. They used some play action in the red zone. They used J.J. McCarthy's legs for a touchdown. I thought just in terms of the opponent, okay, it's not a great opponent, but what they were doing to that opponent and what they were doing tactically to diversify what they were doing in the low red zone was really encouraging.
Seth.
Yeah, I looked at the defense. Nebraska was so bad that like a lot of this game was like they can't throw a pass, they can't catch a pass, they can't run without screwing up a blocking assignment. So he had to kind of pretend a little bit that the opponent was going to be competent. Michigan's pass rush is the one thing that kind of made me nervous. This is the first game I think in a while where they just said, all right, let's just try to rush 4 a lot of times and see what we got. And they were doing that with, Upshaw. We know Upshaw's going to be responsible. He's not going to like blow people up, but he's responsible. He's a positive in there. Harrell is just, he's not a good pass rusher. And I can see why he's in there because that allows you to use Michael Barrett and Junior Colson in your rushes as well. He's the guy that gives you access to all the things that Minter wants to do. But when he's the one rushing, he's actually not that much of a threat. And it was a little concerning because those guys get pushed past. That kind of puts everyone else in a tough position. And then they had a lot of issues letting the quarterback run free. And there were a couple of opportunities where they could have gotten more, or they messed up each other's rush because no one's just the guy. And that's one thing that they're just super missing in this team. Like they don't have their Ojabo this year. They don't have someone they're like, okay, that guy's going to get the pass rush. I just need to set up and make sure the quarterback stays contained and he's going to do the job.
Okay, sorry about that, Craig.
Yeah, it feels that's right, but Michigan actually leads the Big Ten in sacks. So even though
opponent adjust,
right, I know,
you have to.
but so I'm not sure the pass rush has really been that bad, But I mean, I hear what you're saying. I have the same feeling about it, but when you look at the numbers are actually pretty good.
Right, but you have to know when those sacks are coming. Those are coming when Michigan's up, when they know giving the ball back to Michigan again. Like Brian said, Blake Corum is averaging 6 yards a carry, and his long was 12 yards. Yeah. If you give Michigan the ball with 5 minutes left, you're not getting the ball back.
Also, I think 14 of those sacks came against Colorado State and Indiana.
Yeah, I think that's
so.
True. But this is true for everyone in the conference.
Yeah, no, because
they all have such events.
I know they do, but just because Michigan was able to really take advantage of the fact that Indiana's offensive line is terrible, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate, right? So Mike Morris is able to run over D2 transfer for Indiana, but that it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be a linear thing. And Michigan's pass rush, which is really good against Indiana, is going to be kind of good against Ohio State. It could be really good against Indiana and just not get to CJ Stroud at all.
Yeah, it could be. On the, one thing that you were saying, Brian, I mean, the feeling I had during the game is that it seems like this offense isn't going away. And I mean, this year or next year. I mean, primarily because the offensive line, not only is it good, it's actually deep. And it feels like something's going on within the program to find the right guys and to create the sort of system for these right guys. I mean, they're not recruiting superstars. They're not recruiting 5 stars by, or even close. But they're doing something on the evaluation and coaching side and putting them in a system that's quite suitable for what they have and feels kind of sustainable. I mean, is that Pollyanna-ish, or is this?
I think they're recruiting 4 or 5 stars. They just obviously
I don't think
they haven't landed them, but they were.
They're recruiting them, right? But the kids they're ending up getting, have not.
But how much does that really matter for offensive line? Like, it matters a little bit, but you can take a guy like Jeffrey Percy, who's a 4-star, but outside the top 100, and down the road, if you have the program to do it, he'll play like a 5-star. Like, I think Zinter's playing like a 5-star. I think Keegan's pretty close. I mean, neither of those guys was like getting recruited by Alabama, right? So I feel like they've started 8 different guys this year, right? They've started El Hadi for a few games. They've started Percy. They've started Carson Barnhart as backups. And all those guys looked functional. They didn't make a lot of mistakes. And that, I think, is one thing that does feel like part of the program now, is that their offensive linemen really have all their assignments down. They don't miss them. And it's really hard to do that on a consistent basis, because if one guy messes up a block, then you're probably not going to have a successful play. So being able to execute 95% of the time is a huge advantage over even 90%. That's just the way the math works. So Michigan has been rotating guys through, and they haven't really had a drop off. And honestly, that was kind of true last year. You had Filiunga and Barnhart playing guard a lot. And while Barnhart didn't really have the power to come up with a Jacob Slade, it's not like he was screwing up his assignments. So yeah, I feel like they really have what they're doing down, and you're never going to, well, I'm not going to say never, but for years, this program was flinging true freshmen into the starting lineup at offensive line. And now I just don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. Like, Zinter was a redshirt freshman, and I think that's going to be a rarity going forward too, because like
Zinter was a true freshman, but it was 2020.
Oh, well, yeah, that barely counts. But it just feels like, they've got a number of guys who already have experience who will be pushing through into the starting lineup next year. So, yeah, I do feel like this offensive line is more solidified than I've probably ever charted, just in terms of this year and the future.
Yeah, that's Go ahead, Sam.
It stuck out to me to be able to run the football that well with Trevor out, with Trente. Still, it was great to see Trente come back, but it speaks to, as you've been talking about, them being able to really, really develop some guys, and the way that they do such a great job with their run game of not just being physical, but of game planning different opponents. They come in with the same, sort of base run plays, but you might emphasize a couple of different ones in a given week, and you make them look different too. And it really accentuates the fact that they're physical, because they fool you as well. And they fooled Nebraska a good bit in this game on a couple of occasions. And I just feel like that piece of it goes underappreciated because people just don't watch the run game like that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm watching a couple of these runs, and I'm like, why is this linebacker burying his face in the line 3 gaps away from the play? And I'm like, oh, they're in pistol and they're handing off to the left side. And so he's like, oh God, inside zone coming. And it's a counter. And he's just he's keying off the running back. And if you're keying off the guard for power, well, sometimes they're pulling the tackle and then you're just sitting there for 2 beats and then you're not able to scrape over in time. And they just ran power, right? So they ran power. But what they do is they run power with different guys and they motion the tight end right over where they want to go. So he's got a positional advantage when they want to do it. So they have a ton of different little tweaks for all their run plays. And honestly, how much stuff do they have in their playbook that they've been repping all year that they just haven't had to run? Like, I feel like given the dominance of this run game, they probably have a lot of things up their sleeve that they're probably not going to bring out next week, and Ohio State's going to get the brunt of. So
that feels quite possible to me. For example, I mean, it seems like they've even used wide receivers in power.
The Ravens stuff.
Yeah, and and that's something I don't recall much of Michigan using, or really anybody using much. Maybe the Ravens used it, but
so they have a play that I called wide receiver insert, which is not
basically
common, it's basically, I mean, it's basically an ISO. They have a trips
Ronnie Bell, the fullback.
Yeah, Ronnie Bell goes inside one of the tight ends, and that's where the wide open touchdown in the red zone comes from, because he sees that action from Ronnie Bell, the safety, and then he's gone. Like, he's 2 yards across the line of scrimmage when Ronnie Bell's scoring a touchdown. And so
it was a duo. He's involved in their duo package this week in different ways, and that was one of the ways. And on that particular play, they trade. It's sort of like, you know how when you run like 4 verts and you have the inside and the outside guy trade. Think of that same concept with the blocker. So the tight end and Ronnie trade on that play, or Andrell on one play did the same thing. And they had run that like 3 or 4 times by the time they got to the red zone.
Yeah.
And when they saw it in the red zone, it's like, oh my God, you aren't going to beat me this way this time. And Ronnie runs right by him. So they set stuff up so well. And that's the other thing. I mean, to be able to kind of get them leaning, then hit them with a knockout blow. And this gets me to the play action piece, because that was a play action pass. It was a play action pass to Ronnie on, well, I called it a post corner, but that was a play action pass. It was a play action pass to Colston Loveland on the dagger wheel. I mean, play action was hitting in this game. It was hitting hard in this game. And so that's my biggest takeaway. You know they can run the football. You know they're going to run it on anyone, I think. They're going to run it on Illinois, even with their defense. But the downfield passing element, as they continue to work it, what are the things that they know they can do? And I think play action is one of those things.
Well, I mean, everybody is concerned about the fact that Michigan hasn't hit like a true deep ball in a really long time. But if you are able to have this ground game and then you go play action and you're able to pick up a 20 or 30 yard chunk, like, do you really need to complete a fade pass? I don't think so. And especially when you add back in JJ running the ball, because later in this game, Michigan was able to put some guys in the wrong gaps when Nebraska went with an 8-man front. When they didn't do that, it was a free hitter at like 3-4 yards, and then you get some yards after contact. That's still productive rushing play. But the difference between what we saw against Nebraska and what we saw against Penn State was the activation of JJ McCarthy. And you got to check him. And then that takes your extra guy out of the box. And then if Michigan gets a hat on a hat and is able to run away from another guy, and then you're right to the safety. And I don't know if Michigan's going to need to do that against Illinois. I think that they probably will show it a little bit, because they want to have JJ coming off a couple of live fire reps when they go into Ohio State. But I said along a 12 in this game, right? And that's because quarterback runs are off. But if you have the quarterback runs on, if you have that 8th guy in the box who needs to be there because you are fully activating your quarterback in the ground game, and then you go play action, man, that intermediate stuff that JJ's been great at all year is going to be open. So I mean, my main concern is that Michigan stalls out in the red zone because they've moved the ball against everybody this year. And I mean, I watched that Northwestern game. I think Michigan can replicate what Evan Hull was able to do against Ohio State.
What, you think Blake Corum is a little better than Evan Hull?
Right. Right. I agree.
Yeah.
It's just that's the thing I keep coming back to. I try to deal with the people in the extremes, those who like, oh my God, they can't complete a downfield pass like it's the end of the world. They're ready to jump off a bridge. And then the other end of it is, oh, there's just nothing to see here. Who cares if they haven't completed a downfield pass? There's a happy medium. They are 10-0. I have not experienced in my life. The only one in this group who's experienced Michigan to have back-to-back seasons this good is probably Craig Ross, right?
Yeah. Yep.
None of the rest of us can.
Yeah, he got that 1901, 1902, 1903, 1904, 1905 era, man. Like, I wish I could have lived through that, Craig. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, that was incredible.
So the point is, they are 10-0. They're one of the best teams in the country. They have a boss run game. They have a defense that's way better. Hey, you might have questions about how good they really are. What you can't have a question about is they are a ton better than most people predicted them to be. So there's a lot to be excited about, but there's still a couple of things to work on. And here's the other thing, to Brian's point, kind of indirectly, Ohio State has things to work on too. So I'd rather have what Michigan has to work on than what Ohio State has to work on. I'd rather be in this position than the one they're in right now.
I mean, really, Michigan fans are having two conversations right now. The conversation about what we're doing against the schedule thus far, which they've absolutely dominated, and the conversation about what happens in the playoffs. And for all intents and purposes, this is the last regular season game, and then next week the playoffs begin, right? You have to take out Ohio State, then you can advance to the Big Ten championship. You win that thing, you move on to the playoffs. Like, we're having two different conversations. So the conversation about can Michigan destroy a team like Illinois or anybody else in the Big Ten, up to and including Penn State? Yeah. Can Michigan do this against a playoff caliber team, and what are they missing to do it? So we're talking about that last piece. Can they go from the team that can win the Big Ten, because they are there. They are absolutely the caliber of team that could just romp over the Big Ten. Can they win a national championship? Are they there? And the questions for that are, can they get pass rush naturally? And can they get their downfield passing game going? And those are the two conversations we're having. And when people are having those conversations, they're having in the context of, this is what we've seen, and this is what we haven't seen, because we haven't seen the Ohio State game yet. And we don't see anybody, apologies to Penn State, we don't see anybody until next week.
Hey, Craig. So people are wondering
Man,
how old you are, man.
people are ripping the hell out of me here.
They're respecting their venerable elder.
Oh, nonsense. Nonsense. And I have to say, though, I did actually meet Fielding Yost's widow. And that is
not helping
true.
your case, Craig.
Well, I know, but I mean, that's the truth. So
Like
So
before we were taping, he was telling us about he went across Europe with 50 pieces of 8. That didn't help your case either.
well,
Yeah.
I did $50. I came back with 7. So
Let's lock up-
$43 for 9.
let's sort of put Nebraska to bed, because I want to get you guys to give me a deep dive into Illinois really, really quickly. Your concern level, scale of 1 to 10, with the downfield passing game, because I think it's important to distinguish. Like you said, Brian, they've been doing a great job shortening intermediate passing. It's just the downfield element. So what's your concern level on that side of things? And is there anything defensively to kind of piggyback on what Seth was talking about? What's your level of concern defensively as we head into this, not necessarily this game, but into the Ohio State game?
So deep passing, I'd say about a 5. I think it's a real concern. I don't think it's necessarily going to be something that's going to be devastating. But, if Ohio State's like looking at this and they're like, okay, we got to go 0 on coverage on this. Like, they got to have a response over the top. And it's probably going to be Roman Wilson. And I think we've seen enough from Wilson early in the year to know that he's going to get open. And honestly, the accuracy of JJ's deep shots has gotten much better. So there's the near completion to Cornelius Johnson in this game. I think he chooses the wrong ball on the deep shot to Bell. I think that should be a back shoulder. But if Bell is actually over the top there, that's going to be a completion. That you couldn't put that in a better place. And then the Andrew Anthony one, I feel was a broken attempt to get a offsides call. And so there's no snap count there, and he gets immediate pressure. I'm not going to really put that on him. So over the course of the past few games, you've been seeing guys not get over the top. You've been seeing guys not quite get open. And you've been seeing marginal misses. I think it's not like these are 5 yards off. These are almost. So I think that give him a couple more shots, activate the run game, get people more open downfield, and there's going to be a hit. Like there's going to be a time when this happens in the Ohio State game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, if Ohio State in particular comes with cover 0, which I think is likely at some points in the game, they've got to punish them for doing that, which probably means play action and going up. And so I have some concern. Defensively, my concern isn't so much sacking people, it's getting out of rush lanes against Stroud. And that's a problem we've had a little bit over the course of the year. I'd rather just anaconda Stroud, squeeze him in the pocket more, and not give him pass lanes. If we can sack him, so much the better. But I'm less concerned about that than I am if Ohio State comes with cover 0, how Michigan responds to that.
Seth?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Ohio State's guards, right? It's Matthew Jones and Donovan Jackson. Both those guys, they were tackles. They were like highly recruited tackles, and they've been really good at pass rush, but they've not faced defensive tackles like ours. Really, I don't expect, other than Mike Morris, nobody can get consistent pass rush from the defensive end spot. Oki, he's decent. He's not awesome. He's not an Ojabo. We certainly don't have anyone like a Hutchinson. I think that their best bet is probably to get that pass rush from the interior, which they've gotten this year. They just haven't really tried. Mason Graham is surprisingly really good at this. And the stuff that he does, I think it's actually going to work. Mozzie Smith is actually really good at just pushing the pocket. Now, none of these guys are they're not very long-armed dudes, right? Chris Jenkins and Mozzie and even Graham are not dudes with freakishly long arms. Rayshon Benny is. So I don't know how that's going to work when they're facing guys who have the length that Ohio State's guards have. But if they can get pass rush there, I think that's going to work. I don't know if they're going to be able to get pass rush against their tackles because their tackles are great. So I agree with Craig that you kind of use the constrictor system, but as long as you're denting the middle, that is still going to put him under pressure. And Stroud hates that. He hates pressure up the middle. Almost more than he hates pressure off the sides. And everyone knows, everyone's seen the tapes before. I'm sure everyone's seen the video out there of Stroud when he's under pressure versus when he's not. And that's the game right there, because Stroud's receivers are going to get open. I like our cornerbacks a lot, but
let's not assume that, right? Jackson, JSN has not really played this year. Julian Fleming, he's not Chris Olave, right? They have Marvin Harrison Jr., and then I think their other guys are a step back. And last year, I mean, how did that game go? They got some yards, but what it required from their wide receivers was absolute heroism.
They made some fantastic.
They were out of their minds.
Good point.
And so if they're able to replicate that, then they'll probably get 27 points, because that's what they got last year. And I don't think that their ground game is going to do a whole lot. Their running backs are banged up. They're not able to consistently move the ball against Northwestern or whoever they played a couple weeks ago, where it's they had one 41-yard run and the rest of the day they had 37 yards on the ground.
That Penn State you're talking about?
Yeah, the Penn State game. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, we've seen what Michigan's been able to do as a run defense, and I think that they're going to have to put an awful lot on Stroud. And then if he's comfortable in the pocket, I think that changes things. And then Ohio State is going to run him. We saw that late in the Northwestern game. They actually ran bluff for arc, and they got a huge play out of it that they needed. And I think they were probably saving that for Michigan. They're probably repping it a lot because they're prepping for Michigan. But they got stuck in this game, and what was the thing that kind of broke the dam for them? Well, they activated Stroud's legs, and that's something that Michigan needs to be prepared for.
All right, so let's pause because we need to. As someone said, hey, isn't there a game to play before Ohio State? Yes, there is against Illinois. So we will talk about the Illini coming up on the other side as we get to a break. Though, want to remind those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle to get on board with Brighton Ford. That's where John Cuter and his crew will take care of you with the great deals like the one on the 2022 Ford F-150 Super Crew, $409 a month with $2,000 down, or $473 a month with $500 down. 2022 Ford Escape SE all-wheel drive, $367 a month with $2,000 down, or $431 a month with $500 down. Last but not least, the 2022 Ford Edge SEL all-wheel drive, $329 a month with $2,000 down, or $391 a month with $500 down. Those are another great deals. Again, get on board with Brighton Ford. Got to get to a break. Back on the other side with more MGoBlog Roundtable here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK. The Ticket.
Clear on the radio.
Illinois. We're about to get into talking about the Illini. Any update on Chase Brown? Have you guys seen?
No. I just know he got hurt last week, and how bad it was. Who knows? Maybe. So it's hard to say.
They need this one now. So if he can go, he's going to go.
Yeah, if he can walk.
Did any of you guys happen to probably not see any of the Toledo Bowling Green game?
No.
I only saw one
you were
frame.
on TV.
No, I was. I know. David somehow caught a picture of me in the crowd. I was sitting with Scott's wife, and my brother, and well, that was the craziest, wildest game I've probably seen in 40 years. It was just unbelievable. It was a big game for Bowling Green because that's their 6th win, and they haven't been there in a while.
Yeah, I was going to ask, has he had them in a bowl before? So
No. This is the first time they've been bowl eligible. I mean, he inherited a pretty bad team, and I'll keep the other stuff to myself for the moment about what he inherited. But I'll tell you guys. But so this was a big deal for them when winning this game. And
how are they going to do against Michigan State in the bowl game?
Yeah. Maybe they might not do badly. That Bowling Green has a nice quarterback, and they have a couple of good skill players. So they've got a tight end who's phenomenal. He's a freshman, but he'll last 2 years there. He'll be someplace else his 3rd year probably.
And so, this was Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, yeah.
How come DeQuan Finn didn't play in that game?
That's a good question. My brother said the Toledo papers had him saying that he was leaving the program. And that he was transferring, and the speculation was, quote, to a Big Ten school. So Finn, I don't know if the coach just said the hell with you then, or I think Toledo might have already won that side and maybe they were just resting him. I don't know, but I know that the Toledo Blade had published something that Finn has said he was gone.
That's Devin's guy. I gotta ask Devin.
Devin knows Finn.
Yeah, that's one of his proteges.
Well, he did pretty well this year, and my brother said he played, I didn't see it, very well against Ohio State, actually.
Yeah. We shall see what the deal is as this coaching carousel starts to make the rounds. Obviously, Biff just got the Charlotte job, and
that's great.
It's going to be interesting to see if they start coming for Michigan's other assistants.
Well, now I know just to watch for Bruce Feldman articles about our assistants.
Yeah, that was a good article. That was a really nice article about Biff. I mean,
and well timed. Yeah.
You can tell they have his phone number.
Yeah. So
when he does the freaks list every year too, Michigan's right at the top of the list.
On radio in about 30 seconds.
Gotcha.
You can tell there's a connection there.
All
Does
right.
Feldman have any connection to Michigan? I didn't.
Not a direct one.
Not directly.
I mean,
Okay.
he has a pretty good relationship with the program. You can tell.
Okay.
'Cause that
Yeah.
Freaks article every year, he's got like
Oh, it's
video from inside the program and all that stuff.
okay.
Yeah, they're not sending the workout video to MGoBlog.
I gotta stand by. I'll count you back in. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. Want to remind those of you who are craft beer aficionados. I don't know if I asked you guys this. I had this thing where I was talking about how I like a hard cider here and there. And the guy asked me if I drink from a sippy cup. And so at that point, hearing that critique, I didn't stop drinking cider, but I said, okay, you know, I'll try to do what you guys do. See what the craft beer fuss is all about. Started making the rounds last week. Gonna be back out this Sunday at 1:00 at Dan's Downtown Tavern in Saline. So if you like beer and you like ball, we're gonna be talking Michigan, Ohio State. Certainly gonna be watching those Leos, and I want to sample the craft beer selection at Dan's Downtown Tavern in Saline. So Steve Clark and Greg Dooley were walking me through the paces last week. Maybe you'll walk me through them this week. That'll be at Dan's Downtown Tavern in Saline, Sunday at 1:00. Hope to see you there. So, fellas, I'm saying we're going to be talking Ohio State because I'm anticipating Michigan taking care of business against the Illini. What do you see, starting with us, start reverse order this time? What do you see when you see the Illini, Seth Fisher?
They loved blitz. So, I mean, Michigan's going to want to get on the ground, and they might have to get more than a 12-yard run out of Blake this time. I think that you can crack them. You can find holes in what they do. They played a little bit soft against Purdue, and I think that might have hurt them because they kind of ran away from who they are. And they were doing that because they're afraid of Aiden O'Connell, right? But they want to blitz, and they're going to run blitz. They want to shut you down up front and then make you play man. And they play a lot of man. They don't necessarily have all the guys. They're getting a little banged up at this point of the year. We mentioned Chase Brown already, and they've got a lot of injuries in the secondary. Terrell Jennings, Tyler Strain, Tavian Nicholson, all guys that were either in the rotation or starting for them are out. And also their pass rush is missing Seth Coleman, so they're kind of they're missing a lot of the pieces that they would need if they were going to pull the upset. And then on the ground, Alex just did a great faux film on them because they do all sorts of. They're like a Harbaugh running game, and that's Brett Bielema's thing, right? They're gonna run power, they're gonna run counter, they're gonna run pin and pull, they're gonna pin and pull different guys. So you can't just key the running back. You're gonna have to watch your keys. Fortunately, Michigan is the only program in the country that's like, oh, you're kicking out with a tackle. I've seen that. Down G. Down G. Yes. This is not going to be new to anybody who's practiced against Michigan's offense. So I think we're a terrible matchup for them. The only thing is they're going to try to man up and make you beat them downfield one-on-one. Michigan can do that. We'd all like to see it at this point.
Craig Ross.
This week, you might not have seen this, but Australian scientists discovered the first prehistoric crocodile. And I have a quote from the article. You bear with me a bit. This has something to do with Illinois. And it's the first time, Sam, you're making me laugh. It's the first time a croc had been discovered with a dinosaur in its stomach. So I had this vision of scientists standing around a grease board. And the top of it said, Old World Prehistoric Crocodiles Social Order. And on the left column, you had like the working class crocodiles, and they had like White Castle or McDonald's in their stomachs. And then you had like the professional class crocodiles. They had, Ruth Chris, say, and then you had like the beautiful people, wealthy crocodiles, and they had maybe Andrea from, Greenwich Village in their stomach. And then on the far right, you have question marks, and you've got dinosaurs in their stomachs. Now, the interesting thing is that these scientists speculated that the croc was eaten by another dinosaur. and this is Illinois. Not just that their coach kind of reminds me of a prehistoric crocodile, but that the team has been pretty badly nibbled by dinos in the last couple of weeks, and they don't know what they're up to this coming week.
Hey man, I just heard Herschel Walker do a soliloquy on werewolves and vampires.
Maybe
Wait. Well, no.
Maybe I can run for office too.
No.
Socialism is a little strange, but I would not compare him to Herschel Walker. That is not fair.
Craig, the point is
not
that people
fair.
like Herschel Walker should not be in the Senate. People with severe cases of CTE should be
Vastly more intelligent. I didn't mean that. I just talking about it just made me think.
Someone should ask Herschel Walker about Arkansas socialism. I want to see this.
The start point and the finish point. I just was wondering how you were going to get there. You made it. It took you a while, but you made it, Craig. You made it.
One turnover in the first 35 minutes last night. That's pretty good. Huh?
The message we just got.
That was awesome last night, incidentally. I was jumping for joy. One turnover in 35 minutes is incredible, but that's another conversation.
That's what I'm trying to have, Craig.
Okay.
We were having a different conversation and we decided that one was over.
All right, Brian. So let's get back on track. Illinois, what do you see?
Well, they're a heavily cover one team. They play a lot of man, so their cornerbacks being out is a real problem for them. It will be an opportunity for Michigan to try to hit some more deep shots, just like Seth said. Offensively, they don't throw the ball downfield at all. I mean, you complete 20 of 22. That says a couple of things. One, it says that you got a decent quarterback, but it also says that everything's within like 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So just contain them, keep them in front of you. And if Chase Brown plays, just prove that you're that team when it comes to run defense. And I think they will.
Yeah, they're an odd front team, aren't they? Illinois, they play a lot of odd front. Defensively,
they do. They're a base 3-4. They're going to want to bring their 3-4 personnel on the field. I don't know where Michigan's at with the health of their tight ends, if Schoonmaker's going to play this one or not. I kind of imagine that anybody who's dinged up for Michigan is going to sit out this one, or at least just be available. So I think Michigan, if they spread it out, you get their best guys right now because they're stretched thin in the secondary. There's really no reason to try to over tight end them this time, especially because that actually brings some of their better players like Alec Bryant and Isaac D'Artangelo, who are not great guys against the pass, but really good run stoppers. It kind of gets those guys involved. So, the way to beat Illinois is to, spread things out, use your athletes, and, they've seen all the run stuff that we've had. We've already practiced all the run stuff we had. I really would like to see Michigan air it out a little bit in this game.
Yeah, I was asking that question from the standpoint of, kind of honing in on what their run game plan will be. I think it'll look very similar to what we just saw against Nebraska. They really tailor their run game when they face an odd front team. You see them bring out some unique pieces. They'll pull a tackle on the power. They ran a counter trap. They were doing different things. They ran a double insert in this game where they had the tight ends on the wing. So you can. That's why I say this staff, when it comes to run game disguise and innovation, when as it applies to their game plan, they do a tremendous job. How do they complement that with the pass game this week? And it is my belief. I don't know it. I'm not saying that I know this to be fact, but when you are as effective as they were last week in play action, and you know how Illinois is going to play, I think we are going to see them do more of that this week. Off the top of my head, when the game was still with the starters in, I think I had them with 4 play action passes, and they were 4 for 4.
Well, I just don't get why, if it's not a passing down, why you would ever not go play action with this team. Right? Like, there are some small downsides in terms of like ability to get your head around before the rush gets in, but you're running 75% of the time. If you don't straight drop back on first and second down ever.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting question for a play caller. At some point I'll ask more just that, but when the season is over, maybe we'll get a chance to ask these guys, like, just the when or why not just a heavy dose of play action all the time when you're this kind of run team? Because as a novice outside observer, I agree with you. It would seem to me to be the way to go, but I've never called plays, so I don't know. But what we do know is they ran it, at least off the top of my head, 4 times last week. They got positive plays, 3 big plays on it. I gotta believe they're gonna do that more this week and just try to get rid of Illinois as quickly as they can. Just get everybody out of there with no injury and get ready for Ohio State. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know if it's going to be that way. I just hope it is. So Chase Brown, no update. I was looking for an update on Chase Brown's health. He got hurt. Here's the other thing, guys. I just think Illinois is fraudulent. I never thought they were that good. They have a decent front seven defensively. I think they're physical, but that's not a big advantage against a team like Michigan, who practices against that all the time. They built their reputation. They built their ranking on teams in the West. And then the minute that, their backs got put, or their feet got put to the fire against Michigan State, they lost. And then they come back last week and they lose at home to Purdue. Just a team that Michigan, in my opinion, will have to fall down. They'll have to fall asleep at the wheel to lose to, in my opinion.
Illinois got to stay on schedule. And like they're mini, I mean, what they are is an old Wisconsin team minus the linebackers. Like Bert's rebuilt Wisconsin there. Like they're going to blitz you. They're going to run the ball. They need to stay ahead of the chains. And if you put them behind the chains, Brian Hightower's the Miami transfer who was supposed to kind of save them on the outside. He's not that great. Isaiah Williams is like he was a dude Ohio State wanted at a cornerback, and Illinois convinced him he could play quarterback. They tried playing quarterback a couple times, and they're like, "Nope, you're a slot receiver." I mean, he can jet around and make things happen, but really, they have to stay on schedule. They don't have great pass rushers. Their right guard's a terrible pass protector. They have to pull him out on passing downs. Their best lineman is Alex Big Palk, I just call him Alex Palkus. That's why I call him Big Palk. But he's just a mauler. He's a great run blocker, but again, terrible pass protector. So if you get them in long downs, they're in trouble, and that's been their entire season. As long as they're on schedule, they're just crushing teams. And when you can stop them, and I think Michigan's got the run defense to stop them, that changes the whole story. So I think Illinois is going to get booted off the field a bunch of times, and it's going to be a quick one.
Yeah, I hope so. And then I can pay attention to TCU, Baylor, and USC, UCLA. Those are big games for the Big Ten, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Big
that's
Bears fans this week.
Yeah, definitely true. I mean, I see Illinois as basically Iowa. I mean, they beat Iowa earlier in the season 9-6, and so they're fairly comparable. I mean, they lost by 3 to Indiana, and then they've had the 2 losses by a touchdown, or 8 to Purdue and MSU. Their internal numbers, particularly on defense, are pretty good, but their offense has not been great. It's been okay, and
they're 97th in S&P. They're actually, like, the fancy stats hate their offense. That's part of that's part of how they play. But really, their best players on defense are their the 2 defensive ends. That's why I said they're like Wisconsin. It's like that defensive ends or 3-4 defensive ends. Those big tackle-like guys. And just like some other teams we played this year, they're not that big. And if Michigan push them off the ball, that kind of changes the whole story, right?
Well, if the consensus is that Illinois is butt, can we talk about 1.36 points per possession last night?
I would, of course, love to talk about that.
Yeah, so I was going to spend the last 5-6 minutes on basketball. So interesting game versus Eastern, a bit of a nail biter, and then they come back last night and have a really good offensive outing. A really good shooting night as a team. What do you make of first few games for Michigan basketball? Since you brought it up, Brian, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, obviously they do need to get better at defense. I thought last night was progress on that front. You still have Jet Howard falling asleep a little bit, and he has a real bad habit of not staying square, which is why he fouled out in 17 minutes. But honestly, that might have been good for Michigan just going forward, because he goes out and Kobe Buffkin's like, I can do this. And I really feel like you've got 3 or 4 guys who are quality options to create shots. And I think you got Buffkin. I think you have obviously Hunter Dickinson. You have Jet. And then you have either Doug or Llewellyn, depending on how that works out. If they can find some sort of consistency on defense, and I'm not talking about like Charles Matthews, Xavier Simpson consistency on defense. I'm talking about like good to decent beeline defense. I think this offense is going to be good enough that they're just going to take off. Because last year the pieces just didn't fit, right? So you have Musa playing next to Hunter, and you don't have a lot of shooting on the floor because your point guard is not really a proficient 3-point shooter. This year they have shooting from everywhere, and if you double Hunter Dickinson, you're gonna die. So I'm looking forward to some Beeline era numbers here.
Hopefully, I mean, if Joey Baker can shoot like that, good grief.
Well, I
Frank,
think
you
Joey
want
Baker can shoot like that. I mean, he's a 39% shooter at Duke, and
He's shooting
he's
58% right now, though. I think it's going to come down from that.
well, he'll come down from 58% because no one's ever shot 58%. But can he be a good, consistent 3-point shooter? Well, yeah, I see that. And he's not a terrible defender against some players. He's not particularly quick, but I thought last night he was solid. He also created a couple of baskets. One I think Hunter missed, but he created a couple of baskets, and so I was surprised and impressed. The thing that impressed me the most last night is all of a sudden they seem to fit into the tempo that seemed comfortable for them. I have a friend who's blind, who's a basketball fan. He's been blind his whole life. And he often will call me and say, "Oh no, man, your team is out of tempo. They're not playing at the right pace for that team." And it's something, because he can't see, it's something he can sort of feel and hear. And all of a sudden, I thought in the second half last night, Michigan was in their right tempo. In the first 10 minutes of the game, they had 5 or 6 bad shots. They didn't take the extra pass when the extra pass was there. And they were a little unlucky because Pittsburgh is not a good shooting team. They hit their first three threes, and they're a terrible 3 shooting team. But all of a sudden in the second half, it seemed like, Doug slowed down a little bit. He realized that he didn't have to always be moving at this frenetic level. He slowed down, and the team seemed to realize, we get the ball into the post and then we kick it out to our shooters, and we can drive because we've got guys who can drive to the basket too. And all of a sudden the sort of whole thing seemed to fit together. And as Brian pointed out, no turnovers. I mean, that's the fewest turnovers I can recall from any team ever over 35 minutes.
And the one turnover was just Doug McDaniel dribbling the ball out of bounds. Like, it wasn't part of the offense. It wasn't something that had been induced. It was just kind of a head slapping thing. And the thing is, like, Llewellyn's 0 of 8 from 3 this year. We know he's a career like 38-point shooter, 3-point shooter, 38%. And Kobe Buffkin's 1 of 10. So those numbers are going to come up. So you're going to get some regression from Joey Baker. I don't think Jet Howard's going to shoot 45% on the season. But, I mean, those guys, I guess Buffkin hasn't proven it at the college level yet. But these are guys who are going to come up. And so you're going to have 4 shooters around and Dickinson. And there's just really no way to defend that unless you can go one-on-one with Dickinson in the post. And not a whole lot of people can.
Phil has been saying that they're going to be a better shooting team, and we got a glimpse last night. Hopefully they can. My biggest concern is defense. Can they get some things together defensively, especially when they guard quickness, like Noah Farrakhan, like they're going to see with Frankie tonight. So I like that they get a do-over seeing Frankie after they struggle so much and trying to stay in front of Farrakhan.
Well, they went back to drop coverage last night, and there was a lot of blitzing against EMU. It didn't go very well. And I feel like that was an experiment, and it's still not something that Michigan's capable of.
Real quick, guys. So Michigan State plays Gonzaga to the hilt. They beat Kentucky. What do you think of the Spartans on this young season?
Well, we saw Gonzaga against Texas, and that didn't look real good. I mean, we also played them on an aircraft carrier where everybody shot 20% from three. So, I mean, and then Kentucky is not a smart basketball team. Not right now. Like, this is kind of how they always are at the beginning, where it's just like 5 baby deer who happen to be NBA prospects, and then they kind of get it together over the course of the season. But
which is so smart to play them early in the season like that because it looks great come tournament time.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for the Big Ten. Like, everybody's talking about how it's a down year for the Big Ten, but Iowa just racked up a really nice win against
Northwestern
Seton Hall.
had a good win this week.
Yeah, I mean,
So, yeah, the Big Ten I thought was way down, but I think maybe not true. And Michigan State, while they don't have a lot of depth, they do have a good solid backcourt. And Sissoko looks like he's improved a bit. And Hauser had a great game against Kentucky. He really shot the ball. So
he's the one. He's the
he's
one.
their key, really.
Yeah, he's playing like his brother. If he can play like his brother, then Michigan State's gonna be better than I expected them. They were projected them to be this year. So, real quick, with our score of Michigan Illinois, Seth.
42-27.
All right, Craig.
24-6. The weather's gonna make this a low-scoring game.
And Brian Cook.
29-9.
All right. Fellas, I would normally say I'm going to wish you happy holidays, but you're going to be on next week, not on Thanksgiving Day. Folks, want to let you guys know the Roundtable crew agreed to come on Tuesday. So lock that in, 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the MGoBlog Roundtable. We're going to get it in. Until then, guys, thanks for joining us. And folks, thanks for being with us on the stream here. We'll see you tomorrow on the Michigan Insider on Sports.